You weren't the storm. You weren't the reason she broke. But you were the silence when she was begging for noise. And now she's gone. Not in a blaze. Not with a scream. But quietly. Slowly. Like fading ink on a letter you never finished reading. She didn't ask for much, just one honest sentence, one moment where she could finally feel seen. But you chose comfort over truth. Distance over presence. And now you're here, replaying the moments you thought didn't matter. What do you say to someone who's no longer listening? What do you do with all the words you never said? There's a silence that doesn't come from peace. It doesn't feel calm. It doesn't bring rest. It wraps around your chest like cold metal and tightens. You know the silence I'm talking about. The one that follows after someone stops waiting. She used to wait. For the texts you forgot to send. For the small acknowledgements you kept postponing. For the softness you only offered in the beginning. She waited through your moods. Through your distractions. Through every shrug, every "I'm just tired," every "you're overthinking." And still, she stayed. For a while. Because that's what she was taught, that love meant holding on. Even when it felt like being held underwater. You never yelled at her. You never hit her. You didn't cheat. But somehow, she left still. Feeling starved. Still feeling like a ghost sitting beside you at dinner. And the worst part? You didn't even notice when she started fading. Not really. Because silence doesn't make noise. And numbness looks a lot like strength when you're not paying attention. She told you she was okay. Smiling, laughing, touching your arm. But something in her voice was cracked, like glass that had been glued back together too many times. And you didn't ask. You didn't look closer. You assumed she'd be fine. But there's only so long a person can speak without being heard before they forget how to say anything at all. And you didn't hear her. You thought silence meant peace. But for her, silence meant absence. Silence meant she was alone, even when your body was right there in the room. This isn't a story about a villain. It's not about betrayal, abuse, or dramatic endings. It's about something quieter and somehow even more brutal. Emotional neglect. The kind that doesn't leave bruises on skin but leaves scars on the soul. You were there. But not really. You showed up in body. Not in presence. You gave her your time, but not your attention. You gave her answers, but not understanding. And in that space between what she needed and what you offered, she began to disappear. She didn't leave because she stopped loving you. She left because she stopped recognizing herself in the silence between you. She needed words. Not poetry. Not speeches, just truth. How are you, really? You matter. And I see you, even when you're quiet. But you were silent. Maybe because you didn't know what to say. Maybe because no one ever taught you how. Maybe because you thought love was enough, without language, without effort, without expression. It wasn't. Connection dies in quiet rooms. In unanswered questions. In moments when one person is bleeding and the other is scrolling through their phone. She didn't want perfect. She wanted real. She wanted messy, honest, clumsy words that meant something. Anything. And when they didn't come, when the silence became louder than your heartbeat, she left. Not to hurt you. Not out of anger. but because staying began to feel like erasing herself. You weren't cruel, but you were quiet. And in a world that was the loudest form of pain, you noticed the little things changing. Her laughter faded first. Not all at once, just enough that it felt thinner, forced. Then her questions stopped. She used to ask about your day, your dreams, your thoughts about the future. But when answers come wrapped in walls, questions stop showing up. She used to fill the silence. Now she matched it. And you thought it was fine. You called it comfort. Said it was mature love. But deep down, you knew this wasn't peace. It was distance disguised as routine. She didn't want a perfect life. She wanted to feel alive in yours. To be met where she stood without having to shrink to fit your silence. And when she started packing, she didn't start with clothes. She packed her emotions first. Her hope. Her voice. And you watched her grow quieter and told yourself it was just a phase. But it wasn't. It was the sound of someone giving up without making a scene. You'll remember the day she finally left. Not because of a fight, but because of the way she looked at you when she closed the door. Like someone who had already said goodbye 100 times before saying it out loud. She didn't need you to be poetic. She didn't need grand gestures. She needed eye contact. A hand reaching back. A sentence spoken before it was too late. But your silence was louder than her need. And now you sit in the quiet you created, trying to remember the last thing she said before she stopped talking. It wasn't always like this. You remember that, too. There were nights when she would talk for hours about things you didn't fully understand. But she trusted you to hold her thoughts. She let you see the parts of her that weren't polished, and all she asked in return was for you to stay present when things got heavy. But you mistook her strength for stability. You thought that because she carried herself well, she wasn't carrying anything at all. You missed the tears she cried in the shower. The way she exhaled when you turned away. The invisible grief of loving someone who never truly met her halfway. And now you feel it. The weight of everything unsaid. The crushing clarity of hindsight. The gut punch of knowing you had everything and treated it like background noise. What do you do with a love you didn't realize was dying until it was already gone? You go back. Not to her, but to yourself. To the version of you that stayed silent when it mattered most. You sit with your failure. You listen to the echo of the woman who begged you with her eyes to just speak. And maybe one day, you'll find the words. Not to bring her back, but to never lose someone like her again. This isn't just about her. This is about every relationship that dies in silence. Because love isn't always lost in betrayal. Sometimes it drowns in neglect. Sometimes it disappears in the spaces where words should have lived. She needed words. And you were her silence. And now you understand what that really means. She didn't leave because she stopped loving you. She left because she stopped feeling loved. You called her dramatic when she was drowning. You thought silence kept the peace. But it buried her voice. She begged for connection and you offered convenience. You didn't break her heart. You made her invisible. Every "I'm fine" she whispered was a scream you never heard. And now you remember her most in the quiet moments, the ones she used to fill. You were her silence. And silence, over time, sounds a lot like abandonment. It's strange How silence becomes a mirror. How, after the person is gone, you start to hear all the things they never said. And all the things you should have. You replay it differently now. You see the hesitation in her eyes when she said, "It's okay." You hear the weariness behind her laugh. You remember the way she'd pause as if waiting for you to interrupt her silence with something real. But you didn't. Not because you didn't care, but because you thought you had time. We always think we have time. Until the door closes. Until the messages stop coming. Until her scent fades from your pillow and her voice becomes a memory you can't quite grasp in full. You start to wonder who she became after she left. If someone else gave her the words you withheld. If someone looked her in the eyes and truly saw her. You wonder if she ever sits alone now, quiet, but finally at peace. And the hardest part? Knowing you'll never get to say what you should have said. Not because she'd ignore it, but because it's too late to matter. Love doesn't always end with a bang. Sometimes it ends with the soft closing of a heart that waited too long. And now, all you can do is become the kind of person who never lets silence answer love again. To the next person who stands in front of you, aching to be heard, don't wait. Speak. Say the awkward things. Say the messy, imperfect truths. Say, "I see you," before they start fading into the kind of silence you've already learned to fear. Because next time, you'll recognize it. The slow fade. The quiet ache. The subtle goodbye. And maybe, just maybe, you won't let it happen again. Because now you know, silence isn't always peace. And love left unspoken is still love lost. If this silence felt familiar, don't keep it quiet. Share this with someone you once loved or still do. Maybe they are still waiting to hear you. Leave a comment, not just a thought. Say what you never said. Before your silence becomes someone else's goodbye.